I'd like to call the July 9th meeting in the Williamsburg City Council to order. Ms. Felica, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Rogers.
Here.
Ms. Ramsey.
Here.
Mayor Pons.
Here.
Vice Mayor Dent.
Here.
Mr. Maslin.
Here. You all have in your packet the meeting minutes. Are there any corrections or motion?
I move that the council meetings from January the 9th, 2020 be accepted.
Second.
Mr. Rogers.
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey.
Aye.
Mayor Pons.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent.
Aye.
Mr. Maslin.
Aye. That's where I got January from.
That's where you got January from, yes.
Expect that should be July.
The meetings were, minutes were
Okay.
January.
Thank you. All right, so that takes us to our public hearings. We have several. The first four are a request by the Williamsburg Area Transit Authority on behalf of the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation, and so I'll turn it over to Ms. Burke to handle a few of those together.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pons and Council. PCR 20-004 is a request to change the comprehensive plan designation for Lot 1A from Colonial Williamsburg Support. Working, I apologize. Sorry about that. Pad on that isn't working. Okay, there we go. Start over again. This is a request to change the comprehensive plan designation for Lot 1A from Colonial Williamsburg Museum Support to public semi-public. WATA is currently under contract to purchase this parcel. The proposed change in ownership would require an amendment to the comprehensive plan to reflect the intended land use and new ownership. The Colonial Williamsburg Foundation will retain ownership of Lot 1B, and its comprehensive plan designation will remain Colonial Williamsburg Museum Support. PCR 20-005 is WATA's request to add public transportation and maintenance facility to the special use permit in the limited industrial I zoning district. PCR 20-006 is a request to rezone Lot 1A from Museum Support MS to limited industrial I. WATA is currently under contract to purchase this parcel, and the proposed change in ownership requires a rezoning to reflect the ownership change. Lot 1B will remain Museum Support MS and be owned by the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation. PCR 20-007 is a request of WATA on behalf of the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation for a special use permit to operate and expand the public transportation and maintenance facility at 7239 Pocahontas Trail. The 2013 comprehensive plan designates this property as Colonial Williamsburg Support and states, the uses include a variety of commercial and industrial facilities that support the function of the Colonial Williamsburg Historic District. The applicant proposes changing the designation to the newly created 13-acre parcel at 7239 Pocahontas Trail to public and semi-public. The 2013 plan states that public semi-public uses are generally institutional buildings and lands. These include the municipal center, courthouse, public and private schools, hospitals, religious uses, and cemeteries. The parcel is currently zoned Museum Support. The Statement of Intent for Museum Support, MS, reads, this district is established to allow the uses that are related to and support the function of the Colonial Williamsburg Historic Area. The applicant is proposing to rezone the newly created parcel to limited industrial I. This district is established to create or to encourage light intensity industrial uses in low density, well landscaped settings. The Site Plan Review Committee reviewed this request on February 19th and recommended approval. The Williamsburg Area Transit Authority, or WATA, on behalf of the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation, proposed subdividing the 37-acre parcel into two parcels. This subdivision was approved at the Planning Commission meeting on June 17th, as it does not require city council approval. WATA proposes to improve the existing facilities by adding additional administrative space and 2 additional bus bays. They are currently under contract to purchase the Lot 1A, conditioned upon receiving necessary approvals to continue its operation at this location. The current comprehensive plan designation, Colonial Williamsburg Support, is for uses associated with the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation. The subdivision and subsequent sale of the property to WATA requires a designation change from public to semi-public, public and semi-public. The designation will allow WATA, a public transportation organization, to operate this transit center. The current zoning designation, Museum Support, is for uses that support the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation. The subdivision and subsequent sale of the property to WATA requires a change in designation to limited industrial. A text amendment to add public transportation and maintenance facility to allow this use will allow this use in the limited industrial district as a special use permit. Lastly, the request for a special use permit allows WATA to operate the existing facility in compliance with the zoning ordinance. Staff recommended approval of PCR 20-003 through PCR 20-007 as presented at the Planning Commission hearing on June 17th, 2020. Only the applicant was present and no one else spoke at our meeting. The Planning Commission voted to approve the request by the Williamsburg Area Transit Authority on behalf of the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation to subdivide 37.0992 acres into 2 lots. Since this subdivision is less than 50 lots, no city council action is required for the subdivision. The Planning Commission recommended City Council approve PCR 20-004 through PCR 20-007 as outlined in my memo. I'm available if you have any questions, and the applicant is also present.
So before we go to a public hearing, do any of my colleagues have any questions for Ms. Burke or the applicant? Okay, thank you. With that, I'll open the public hearing, and if anybody would like to come forward to speak to this or any one of these 4 items, please come forward and state your name. Don't feel like you have to.
Oh, well, thank you. Mr. Mayor, do you prefer that I keep the mask on? Can you hear me well enough?
I think
If you hear me, I'll keep it on. Okay.
yeah, that'd be fine.
It might be better if I not speak. Project from WATA's perspective. So, those of you who don't know me, my name is Zach Trogdon. I'm the Executive Director with the Williamsburg Area Transit Authority. And thank you for allowing me to address this item today. First, congratulations to the newly elected council members, Vice Mayor Dent, Councilmember Rogers. Positions, we look forward to working with you with WATA, and thank you, of course, to Mayor Pons and Councilmember Ramsey and Councilmember Maslin, and also former Mayor Freeling and Councilmember Zhang for all the support they've given WATA. But we look forward to working with all of you in WATA's role as a critical piece of the area's transportation infrastructure. Continue to do that moving forward. As to the facility item, WATA has been pursuing the development of this facility for really over a decade. We did consider other properties early on in the process. That's been well before my time at WATA, but none could really overcome the advantages that we have at this location. WATA and Colonial Williamsburg have shared this facility for more than 15 years at this point, and it's brought some tremendous efficiencies in terms of operations and maintenance costs and activities. So, and currently WATA and CWF, we do work closely together, which I hope all of you are able to learn about more as we move forward in providing transportation that enhances the economic and the cultural, even the social life of this area. And so our goal is to maintain that partnership moving forward, even as this property changes hands and we develop it in a different way. But the time has arrived that it's in both the interest of our organizations for this property to change ownership over to WATA and still continue that partnership. A little bit more about the facility, just for information. The use of this site will not create any additional impervious surface, which we're proud of, as all the development will take place on a site that's already developed. So that's really, I think, great for this area, given the environmental sensitivity and just how everybody loves this area for that reason as well. The project has around an approximately $12 million budget. That includes land acquisition, construction, and the soft cost. And Out of this, really only about a quarter $250,000, about 2% of the project will really be coming from, or projected to come from local dollars. So we really are able to leverage a lot of federal and state dollars for this project. So again, thank you for consideration. All of you, and
Thank you for coming forward. I don't see anybody else in the room, so I don't think anybody's coming forward. So I'll turn to my colleagues for comments or questions.
Ms. Burke, thank you for the presentation. I don't have any questions with your presentation and reviewing the background information and Planning Commission minutes. It's all pretty straightforward. I'm glad to hear that WATA's able to secure federal and state funding to improve their facility and enhance their operations, and also improve the accommodations for their administrative staff. So good job on securing that funding.
Just one question. Will the new zoning still allow Zach to produce his bus rodeo?
I think as long as it's part of the operations at that site, it should be okay.
Okay, thanks.
And thank you again for the presentation, and Zach for your comments as well. And in reading the minutes from the Planning Commission, it appears that, as you said, a significant amount of the funding is coming from various grants. I believe the amount that I read was $11 million, so that's very significant, and kudos to you all. Another comment that was made in the Planning Commission notes was that the new facility and what you all will be able to do will all be ADA accessible, and provide a little breathing room for your staff. So I think this is a great win for WATA, and I am fully supportive of all the various ordinances and changes to follow.
I echo everything said by my council colleagues. Thank you, Ms. Burke and Director Trogdon, for coming to speak with us today. I know this has been in the works for a long time, so after reviewing the Planning Commission minutes, it seems like a no-brainer. I'm excited to support. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Ms. Burke. I would agree. I think clearly it's a win-win for both the Transit Authority and Colonial Williamsburg to make this project happen. Bringing in the state and federal dollars to expand the operations there, I think, is a great opportunity for us. And then moreover, just being able to protect this valuable piece of ridership that's important to our community members that need it the most. So with that, I'll entertain a motion.
So do we need to move for each one of
I think we
these?
can tie them all together.
It can be one motion, just make sure you include all of the numbers.
Okay. So if I go to number 4, it says, I move the City Council approve PCR 20-004-007.
It's 20-004, 20-005, 20-006, 20-007.
Okay. So each of them 20-004, 005, 006, and 007, as recommended by Planning Commission to change both the comprehensive plan designation and the zoning for Lot 1A from Colonial Williamsburg support to public and semi-public, and from zoning to light industrial. And then the addition, do I need to add the addition of the
Special use
maintenance?
permit.
And then for a special use permit for maintenance facility? Does that get most of it in there?
I think you did. So I have a motion and second. Ms. Felica, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Mr. Maslin?
Aye.
Thank you all. So that takes us now to PCR number 20-009, the request of the Williamsburg James City County School Board to amend a special use permit granted for James Blair Middle School. Burke.
So this will probably look a little familiar. We've done one of these recently. The Williamsburg James City County Public Schools is requesting to amend the special use permit granted to James Blair Middle School on January 14th, 2016 by adding 2 additional 12-foot by 16-foot bike sheds behind the school at 101 Long Hill Road. The sheds will be used to store bikes for instructional purposes at the school. The property is designated as public semi-public, and that includes the use of schools. The lands to the north and east are low-density, single-family residential, and corridor commercial, and to the south and west are also corridor commercial, economic development, William and Mary, Parkway, and recreational land uses. The property is zoned single-family dwelling RS2. The RS2 district allows, with a special use permit, public or private elementary, middle, and high schools. This property is outside of the architectural review district, and therefore no review is required. The Site Plan Review Committee reviewed this request via email on March 16th and recommended approval. The applicants are proposing to add two 12-foot by 16-foot storage sheds on the northwest side of the school site. The bike program has expanded beyond the capacity of the existing shed. They propose the sheds will provide a convenient location for the bicycles to be stored while ensuring that they are adequately secured when not being used. This property is served by essential public services such as streets, drainage facilities, fire protection, and public water and sewer facilities. The proposed project is in harmony with the adopted comprehensive plan and the intent and purpose of the zoning ordinance. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on June 17th, 2020, and other than the applicant, no one spoke at the hearing. The Planning Commission recommended to City Council approval of the application to amend the special use permit to add two additional 12-foot by 16-foot bike sheds at the James Blair Middle School as shown on the conceptual plan. I'm available if you have any questions. I don't believe the applicant is present.
Any questions for Ms. Burke?
The only question I had was on our packet, the sheds are shown in red, and it looks like, is it the two right down there?
Yes.
Okay.
The existing one is up here at the corner of the building.
Okay.
And this back part of the building is their gymnasium, so that's why they're located towards the rear of the property.
And just for those who might be tuning in, I think there were a couple questions that were brought up again at the Planning Commission about the location of these bike sheds versus the original one, and also a question about the door access.
Yes, so at Planning Commission, there was a discussion about which way the doors were to open to the sheds, and there was a concern that they may open out onto the bike trail there, causing a hazard on the bike trail. And the applicant agreed that that would be a problem, so I believe that they're going to open kind of facing the
Switch them
fields
around.
that way.
Obviously, the existing shed, there wasn't space to put the two new sheds there, but also from Planning Commission minutes, they're only going to build the second shed as the need arises?
Correct.
Other questions?
Other questions? So I'll open the public hearing and invite anybody who wishes to speak to come forward. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and turn back to my colleagues for dialogue. No? Well, I think it is pretty easy to approve. I think it's off the road and it's not going to be an eyesore, and it serves a need for the school. So I would support it as well. Is there a motion?
I move that the City Council approve the special use permit amendment request to add two additional bike storage sheds at James Blair Middle School as recommended by the Planning Commission.
Second?
Okay, Ms. Burke, or Ms. Felica, would you call the roll, please?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Mr. Maslin?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. So that takes us now to our reports, and first we have our monthly financial statement.
Yes, I want to first speak to the projections that we had made for the COVID-19. You have that in your packet, and I want to note that while we anticipated our worst-case scenario to be a draw on fund balance of $4.2 million, we are at June 30th at $1.4 million. Basically, we saw the real estate collections come in stronger than we had anticipated. Meals was a bit better, lodging a little bit worse. And I also want to note with that, though, that we have not finished all of our accounting. We still have some accrual of expenditures, invoices that for things purchased that were utilized for the previous year that have not been yet expended. We also have a payroll accrual. I'm not expecting a lot of revenue to come in that will stay in our pocket. And by that, I mean we will get our sales tax for education, but that will in turn be sent to the schools. And we will have a refund from the schools for their surplus, which we have told them that they could have in '21. I really don't have a good way to measure all the outstanding invoices, but I would expect that we may see that deficit go to $2 million, which is still half of what we had projected. In terms of our sales tax fund, we really won't have that full story until a couple of months because of the delay, so we'll keep watching that. So far, though, it looks like it's will come in fairly decent, so I'm not expecting any big surprises there. And lastly, I will note that our consumption in our water fund is down about 9%. Still in good shape. They have a income from operations of about $800,000. We will continue to monitor that because, as you know, while we did not forecast any growth in water because of increased conservation efforts, we didn't necessarily anticipate a decrease. So with that, I'll be glad to entertain any questions.
I don't have any questions, but, just looking at the numbers and thinking, particularly about lodging, for this report, it's down almost 91%, which is critical for all of us, but most importantly for the hoteliers. Just looking around town anecdotally and talking to some of the folks around, there's been a little bit of a bump, but I don't anticipate that the next months will be a whole lot better. But I am seeing some people in town, so I think that's a positive sign, and certainly an indication to me that we need to get Busch Gardens open. So,
Right.
anyways, anybody else have any comments?
I'd just like to thank Mr. Trivett and Ms. Dameron and all the city staff for monitoring the budget and making adjustments as necessary, realizing the situation that finances are in and making those necessary adjustments. So that plays a key role in that deficit not being as large as predicted. Also, just to echo the mayor's comments, while we all sit back and realize all the struggles that everybody's had with the impact of COVID, when you look at those percentages of tax revenue compared to this time last year at 91% and 61% for restaurants, it really drives home how damaging that's been to local businesses. But also I encouraging as I take my walks, I go by a couple hotels and timeshare, and there were absolutely no vehicles in the parking lot. And then this past weekend, the parking lots were pretty much at capacity. So hopefully that's a positive sign that people are starting to get out again.
I agree with the Vice Mayor. One question, one of the positives to this is actually, I think we waived the service fee for paying by credit card.
Yes.
Our city invoices. Is this a secret, or how long do we think we'll be able to continue that?
It's not a secret, and we have not started to charge that again. Even though we are currently open, we're still at a point where we want to be very cautious. I think we'll monitor that as we go forward, monitor what's going on with COVID-19, and certainly before we make any changes, we'll make sure that we get that out to the public in ample time for them to adjust accordingly.
One of the reasons
Pay in advance.
One of the reasons that we're still able to do that, Mr. Maslin, is that we are covering the cost of those fees with the CARES Act money we received. So that's one of the reasons we're able to keep doing it. And we probably will continue to do that at least until phase 3 comes to an end. We hope.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Or until the money runs out, I guess I should say, right?
I don't have any questions. Thank you for the presentation, the numbers.
Thank you as well, Director Dameron. I think it's a strong point that we have about $2 million in variance from what was projected at the beginning of everything changing to what we actually had in June. So thank you so much for being so fiscally responsible. And I echo the mayor's sentiment that I hope people will continue coming and bringing parking lot capacities while doing so safely. Thank you for the presentation.
All right, so that takes us to monthly operating reports. Mr. Trivett, anything?
Submitted for your review. If there's any questions, we're happy to answer them.
Are there any questions for the
I've
city?
got a couple questions
Yes, sir.
for planning. Oh, yeah, so could you just give us an update on the schedule for the revised comp plan and also the architectural guideline project?
Sure. Since we're back to having public meetings again, this month, the next week, we'll have our first planning commission meeting. That'll be in this room again. Right after that, the following week, we will have our first comp plan meeting since February, really. We'll be probably going over the transportation section and the infrastructure section. And then from then on, we'll have a meeting following the planning commission, which is usually the fourth Wednesday of the month, and keep on with our comp plan update. We're hoping to get it done this fall and start with the public hearings, and probably, and my anticipation is being in council sometime in the first of the year. As far as the design review guidelines, we had our first meeting in February. We did the AP1 section. That went really well. We had a lot of people come out and have a discussion on that. Of course, COVID came, so we're ready to start that back up. I think the first couple of weeks of August. We're looking at doing a product overview first, where we have individual companies bring in different products and spread them out. And then you can look at them and review them and ask questions. And that, I think, sets up the addition of new products that can be added to the guidelines. So before we get into AP2, we'll know what products we think can go in different areas, and we'll start with that, and then start right back up with the schedule with AP2, AP3, and then into CP, and try, again, probably finish up sometime in the first of the year and be into council sometime in the first of the year with the design review guidelines.
Thanks. Another question was, we saw the op-ed in the Virginia Gazette by a former mayor talking about the maintenance of neighborhoods. Could you sort of explain what we're doing now in terms of the additional headcount that'll help that, and how much of this is actually communications enforcement versus do we need additional regulations? We're
currently with 3 inspectors, and we currently have a lot of inspections going on because we have a lot of large projects. Midtown Row is taking up a lot of time. We've got a new large apartment building going in High Street. We have one on Parkway Drive that's being renovated, an older hotel. And now we're getting ready to have another senior housing apartment area in the southern end of the city. So with those projects, basically the inspectors we're currently just doing complaint-based inspections. So with City's Council, thank you for approving the property maintenance inspector. With this property maintenance inspector, we can now go back to more proactive enforcement. So we'll be looking at the rental inspections, the property maintenance code, and what I mean with property maintenance code is things like trash, grass, in-op cars, peeling paint, overgrown bushes, those kinds of things. So with the new property maintenance inspector, once we hire that individual, then we'll be able to be more proactive, and I think that will take care of some of those complaints.
Would this maybe be an opportunity to work with Sharon on a program agenda for the neighborhood council?
That'd be fine, yeah, that'd be great.
Sort of communicate that throughout the neighborhoods.
Right.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Just to follow up on Mr. Maslin's question and your answer, I think as we move forward with the design review guidelines, that whole process, it's important to be able to have citizen input.
Yes.
And so,
and the
where
same
we are
thing
with COVID, and
right.
So hopefully, we'll make some determinations as the process evolves as to whether or not people are showing up and why they're not showing up if they're not, because, I think that's an important aspect of it. So.
And it's important for the comp plan update also for that. one of the main things we're looking to do is the council mentioned back last early winter when we had our meeting with council from the design review guidelines that you wanted to have another meeting with the board. So we're trying to schedule that also so that we can get input from the two new council members before we get too far down in the process. So you'll be seeing that coming up with a potential date to come to the council to have that discussion with the Architectural Review Board also.
Thank you.
Mr. Tribbett, I just, in the city manager's report, and this is curiosity, the 16.75% employee turnover rate, do you, just out of curiosity, you know how that compares to neighboring localities?
You know, I've not looked at neighboring localities. We talk about the turnover rate a lot, though, to try and determine if that's an issue with our benefits or with morale. And what we have found is it's not. Primarily, it has to do with recruits that come in for police and fire that don't make it through academy, as well as a pretty high number of retirees right now. So we're keeping a close eye on it. I can ask Dawn to take a look at some of the other localities to see if they publish turnover rate. A lot of them don't, but we'll check into that.
Okay, thank you.
That takes us right to city manager's report. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, sir.
A question on that. So we just, I think today saw the survey from the Restaurant Association. And one of the comments there was they were looking for help for government in terms of the COVID testing, in terms of, being able to, if they test an employee, getting results back quicker. Is there anything we can do in terms of getting the association in contact with the health district and sort of work out that?
I don't think that let me answer that two ways. Number one is I don't think the city has any way to assist them in that. Certainly we can help them make contact with people who can do testing, but what we're seeing is the volume of testing that's occurring is more than the capacity of the labs that have to then do the analysis of the results. And so while we can get them access to tests and get that as quickly as they'd like, we're having many of our employees tested on a recurring basis as they travel, as they become exposed to people who had it, and we test them before they can come back to work. And what we're seeing is there was a period of time where it was a 2-week turnaround, and then it got shortened to 3 to 4 days. And what we're seeing right now, we were just talking about it yesterday, we're at about a 7 to 9 day turnaround on results. And I think that's really the best that we can do nationally, but certainly in the state of Virginia.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Shelton, anything you'd like to add for the city attorney?
Nothing
report?
today.
Thank you. All right, I don't believe there's any unfinished business, which now takes us to new business. First under item A is a resolution to support the Regional Virginia CDBG Urgent Needs Small Business Recovery Funding Opportunity for COVID-19 response.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. I'm delighted to talk to you about this today. As a bit of background, community development block grants in Virginia are divided into two ways. Some localities receive them directly from HUD, from the federal government, and it's based on your population. If you're large enough, you get them directly, and most cities do. We're one of the few cities that are not large enough, so we have to compete with the remaining localities for any CDBG funding that's available. So that's a little bit of background. With the COVID-19 epidemic, we've been looking for any resources we can to help everyone in our community, businesses and our citizens and visitors and students. And so Wendy Evans and I in April learned about COVID-19 funding coming through CDBG funding through HUD. And it came to the Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development. And you'll recall back in April, we asked you to hold a public hearing. You held 2 public hearings as required by HUD about the city using funds to help our citizens and businesses. At that point, we had a lot of details about how we could help citizens in need with groceries and housing assistance and rent assistance, but the state was not prepared. They didn't have any specifics about how to use it for business grants. We really wanted to use it for business grants. That's been a big need that you've discussed in earlier parts of this meeting. So they asked us to, we went ahead and included it in the public hearing and in the public comment period that you had, knowing that the details would come. The details have come. So that's a long story to tell you that we now know how we can use these funds. They've asked us to partner with the other localities in the area who also want to use these funds in this way. So we've partnered with York County and the city of Poquoson to apply for a grant that would allow us to provide $5,000 grants to, we're estimating 100 businesses in the city. And the businesses, according to state and federal regulations, must have 20 employees or fewer, and they must use these costs to reimburse them for, or use this grant to reimburse them for any COVID-19 related costs that they've had. Having said all that, we will judge those criteria very liberally to try to get as many businesses qualified as we can in the city. So you may be a business that typically has more than 20 employees, but because of COVID-19, you may have dropped down. A lot of our businesses did drop down. So if at any point you hit 20 or fewer employees, you will qualify, and we'll be as liberal as we can in how those reimbursements can be made. This resolution authorizes the city manager to sign all the documents and authorizes York County to be our fiscal agent to do all the reporting with the state. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Ms. DeWitt. I did have a couple questions. Can you explain the process for the business? Is how that's going to work for the business? Is it going to be fairly simple or a cumbersome process for them?
We will make it as simple as we can, Councilman or Vice Mayor Dent. We have experience with the BPOL grant that we did through the City Council and EDA, and we were lucky that our tourism development specialist has the skill of being able to use an online application system, which very much eased that process, because not only did we need to think about it from the business perspective, it also had to be reviewed by many departments in the city before it was eligible, and a lot of that data was confidential. So sharing PDF files and emails and even printed files was difficult in a COVID-19 environment. So this system is what we hope to use for the City of Williamsburg businesses. So far, the state says we can do that. What we will do is take the written form that the state has, and we will put it into our online system and make that available for businesses. And as always, my office is available. We, if people have trouble downloading or uploading things, we do that for them. We'll do everything we can to get as many people qualified and get the money on the street.
So, how will the money be distributed amongst the three localities? There's a limit for each locality?
There's not a limit, so it'll be first come, first serve. But I think we'll, given that we've had great communication with our businesses since always, but especially since March, we know how to reach them directly. We'll do the same as we did with our BPOL grant. We'll send a postcard physically in the mail to every one of our 800 businesses, so they will know immediately. We'll do follow-ups and make sure that, I'm confident that at least 100 of our businesses will get there first come, first serve.
So from the city's perspective, I don't see a downside. There's no downside for us to participate in this regional grant.
No, certainly not. It's something our businesses need, assistance of any kind at this point, and I think it's well worth going through the state and federal hoops to do so.
Thank you. I know the businesses will appreciate that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. I think I'd like to commend the Economic Development for really all the work that you've been doing in terms of helping our existing businesses. I think you've been ahead of the curve for any other localities we see in our area, which has been great. I've talked to a couple of merchants at Merchant Square, and they're really excited about this program. To your point about the number of employees, one of the restaurants I was talking to, they had 77 employees before COVID, and then they went down to 10.
Yeah.
So, and maybe right now they're halfway back to where they were before.
Yes, you're exactly right, Councilman Naslin. So what we will do is ask them to report that lowest number, so 10, so they will qualify for the grant. And I'm encouraged to hear that they're halfway back to their 77, but we realize our restaurants, all our businesses have a long way to go, and we're doing everything we can to assist them.
Thank you.
Thanks again, and I would like to echo Vice Mayor Dent's comments regarding all that you and your staff have been doing. It's really heartwarming to get all those emails every week, seeing all the communication with the businesses and urging them to apply and do what they can to receive some of these funds. And you mentioned the BPOL program, and I know there were some qualifications to that one in regards to franchise operations. So with this grant, if, let's say a fast food place is part of a major chain, but locally they only have 20 or less employees, will they qualify for this grant?
It will depend how they've set up their arrangement, and most likely the answer is yes, because most likely they will have formed an LLC for that particular restaurant, and those employees will just be counted there. I think it'd be very rare for them to have an LLC or other corporation that was multiple physical locations. So every case will be individual, but most likely they will be able to do it in a way to qualify.
Good, thank you.
Director DeWitt, you mentioned the strong connection between your office and businesses. I think that's very much to the, because of you all. I remember, like Councilwoman Ramsey said, seeing the multiple emails from Yes Williamsburg, letting businesses know immediately to make sure that you are keeping track of what your losses are. So thank you so much, like we've all said, for making sure that our businesses have done that. And I was in a very informative conversation yesterday with the Williamsburg Area Restaurant Association, in which they said the average number of lost employees is 19 restaurants around the city, of which they have in their member group over 100. So I think that's a very wonderful idea, to make sure that at the lowest point, businesses will be able to apply if they got below the 20 number. So thank you very much for working as hard as you do.
Sure,
Happy
thank
to support.
Thank you. Obviously, anything we can do to help is a positive thing. Are we waiting on James City County and York County to vote on this, or have they already, or who's the?
We are first out of the gate, Mayor Pons, so we are waiting. Pocosin will vote, I think in about a week, and then York County's the last vote on July 21st. And then we hope the paperwork will all be signed July 22nd. It will be ready to go.
No reason to believe that any one of the jurisdictions would back out. Okay, good. All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to adopt Resolution 20-13, supporting a regional Virginia CDBG urgent needs small business recovery funding opportunity for COVID-19 response program, and authorizing the city manager to execute required documents for the program.
Second.
Ms. Felico?
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Mr. Maslin?
All right,
Thank you. That moves us forward to the announcements of the mayoral appointments to boards and commissions. Mr. Trivett?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, every 2 years, the city council reorganizes, and we just did that July the 1st. An extension of that process is for the mayor to make appointments of various city council members and staff to the boards and commissions that we serve on across the region. That list is included in the council's policies and procedures manual. For the July 1st meeting, we leave many of those positions blank, reflecting the loss of members from city council, and then today we'll be appointing new members to fill those vacancies. So the revised list is attached to the agenda, and we will proceed with updating the policies and procedures manual with this list, as well as the clerk notifying those boards and commissions of the new appointments.
Good, thank you. And I think we've communicated with the members of council where they'll be serving, and I appreciate all your willingness to step in these new assignments, and look forward to hearing some feedback. As we do every month, we have an opportunity for council to share what's happening on their boards and commissions. So that requires no motion?
No votes required.
Perfect, okay. So then that moves us on to consideration and adoption of ordinance to amend section 2-3 of the Williamsburg Code of Virginia to increase courthouse security fees and add an electronics summons fee.
Mayor and members of council, this year Senate Bill 149 was passed, which authorizes an increase for the fee for courthouse security to go from $10 to $20. This is the fee that the sheriff's office uses to fund their personnel. And if council approves the sheriff's office to use those funds for equipment, they can use the funds for equipment. James City County has already imposed the additional $10. The fee is added to the cost of criminal and traffic cases as an additional court cost. Additionally, last year, the Code of Virginia allowed the cities and counties to impose a $5 fee on civil and traffic cases for the cost of software, hardware, and maintenance for an electronic filing system, an e-summons system. The city didn't have one at the time, and we have been working on implementing that, and it has been implemented for a couple of months. James City County, again, already charges this fee. I've gotten several calls from the clerk's office and various staff at the courthouse wanting to know if we were going to increase the fee. So you have an ordinance in front of you. It is somewhat difficult for them because we have a joint court system to have one set of fees for the county and one set of fees for the city. And so the staff recommendation is that City Council approve ordinance number 20-09.
Any questions for Ms. Shelton?
Seems straightforward.
I'll entertain a motion.
I move that City Council adopt proposed ordinance 20-09.
Second.
Lico, please.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Mr. Maslin?
Aye.
So that moves us to a recently added agenda item to the consideration and adoption of ordinance 20-08 to extend temporary allowance for outdoor area and certain streets in the cities to be used for outdoor dining. Mr. Trivett?
Sorry. In May, I issued temporary zoning guidance that allowed conversion of some parking lots as well as some city streets to be used for outdoor dining. At the same time, we also installed some outdoor seating for public use on Duke of Gloucester Street. That allowance, my ability to provide that flexibility really only extended about 15 days. So we were very quick to bring it to council and have you ratify that decision and extending it out to date certain of July 31st, expecting that we would be to some new phase of operation by then, particularly aiming at a point in time when restaurants are allowed to use 100% of their dining room again. So we're nearing July 31st, and clearly we're not going to be to that point like we had hoped we would be. So the Williamsburg Area Restaurant Association asked us to consider extending this out. And so rather than piecemealing it every single time with a new date, what we did was we just simplified the ordinance so that it is attached only to the point in time when the governor allows 100% utilization of indoor dining space. Now, I want to be clear because it is a little confusing. In Phase 3, the governor has said 100% of indoor dining space can be used. However, with the requirement for physical distancing, 100% of that space can't be used. And so it's a tricky turn of phrase, but it is an important distinction. So this ordinance, if approved by the City Council, will allow that outdoor seating to stay in place until we're back to some semblance of normal for restaurant operations. I also want to make it clear that just because the City Council takes this action today does not mean that those closed streets have to remain closed for that entire time. We've been very clear with the businesses impacted, meaning those adjacent, that everybody needs to be in support or we need to revisit what we're doing with the seating area. And we've already done that a couple times on the 2 blocks of Prince George Street, and we will continue to keep a close eye on what the businesses need and expect from the city. We're really just trying to do something that's helpful, and the point in time when it stops being helpful, we'll need to adjust it.
Mr. Dent, anything, questions?
Yeah, no questions, but I have heard from many restaurants and patrons as well that have expressed their thanks for having that outdoor arrangement. The restaurants, they had to adapt to carry out, which many of them weren't equipped to do. And then they transitioned to outdoor seating, which many of them were not equipped to do. And in fact, yesterday we heard that some restaurants who do not have the outdoor seating, patrons are calling and asking if they have outdoor seating, and they say no, and no reservation. So it's been a huge success for the restaurants that have been able to utilize it. One of my concerns is, as you pointed out, Mr. Trivett, is the 100% seating capacity. We know that it's still social distancing, but even when we get to the point of 100% seating capacity with no social distancing, there's still going to be a large part of our community that's going to be in fear of not having that social distancing. So while I favor this, I would like the opportunity, if we see that restaurants are not getting that 100% capacity later on down the road, just because people are in fear of the social distancing, not having the social distancing, that we consider revisiting this if it'll help the restaurants.
And just in response to that, Mr. Dent, one thing that we know already is that many of the businesses adjacent to these blocks of Prince George Street would like to see some version of what we have done continue beyond COVID-19. And that's consistent with the downtown vibrancy plan that we did some years ago. If we're going to do that, though, there needs to be a broader conversation to make sure that a permanent change really does benefit all the businesses. Because when you think about at least a couple of those blocks, there are businesses of all different types, right? All different types of customers included, and they all have different needs regarding parking, on-street areas, access. And so it's a tricky proposition to accommodate everybody's need, but I think that one thing that has come out of this emergency that's positive is we've gotten the opportunity to test this, whereas otherwise we may not have ever gotten that opportunity. And one of the things I think we have learned is that a solution that benefits everybody probably exists. And we have to give 100% credit to Michelle DeWitt for getting us to this point, because at the early onset of the decision to make this offer to the businesses on Prince George Street, I really didn't think we would be able to get to a consensus on closing any portion of it. And Michelle's tenacity got us across the finish line to get everybody on board, and we've since revisited that, made some changes to try and make it better for everybody. And so I think we're really being very flexible, and I think that the business owners are being patient enough that we're able to try some things to see if we can find that happy spot where all those types of businesses, whether it's a restaurant or a lawyer's office, can benefit from the change. So I think there is a future for it beyond COVID-19, but I think we're going to have to be very careful to make sure it benefits everybody. Thank you.
Mr. Maslin?
I've got a recommendation for a procedural amendment, but before that, I agree with Pat's comment. I think a lot of people may be reluctant to come back inside dining, and the more we can keep that there, the better. And also, following up on what Drew's saying, I think this gives us an opportunity to reimagine downtown vibrancy. In other words, I think we can get more bang for the buck for pursuing these options than we did for looking at lights over Prince George Street or new signs. I mean, this, I think we can really get some momentum going, so I appreciate that. In terms of the procedural amendment, I would recommend that, since we don't know what day the governor might wake up and say, hey, there's going to be 100% allowed capacity, and then automatically this expires, I'd recommend we put a date in there, like within 10 days after the governor allows indoor dining at 100%, something like that. So you don't have to immediately say, hey, the ordinance is gone.
Sure, I think that's fine. I think that just from a practical standpoint, the way that we would administer this is, and we learned this just recently, noticing is important for taking a closure out. And so it would not be immediate upon the governor's change of order. One of the things that we have seen in the way that information has been rolled out from the administration has been, we only get 2 or 3 days notice, and that's not sufficient for restaurants to know that they're losing outdoor seating like this. So whether or not it's in the ordinance that we're going to take that time, I think it's imperative on us to say, okay, the governor has relaxed physical distancing requirements. Now we are going to remove this outdoor seating area, if that's the decision when we get to that point. And then we would notice the restaurants and give at least 7 days, but probably more like 2 weeks notice before the closure actually opened.
So question for Chris, do you think the way the ordinance is written, we should?
This is done pursuant to a special events permit. So the city manager has the ability to issue those for 15 days, and if necessary, he can just reissue one for 15 days.
Which is what we've been doing.
Okay.
That'll satisfy you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, good.
And I don't have any questions, just echo again that I think this has really been a benefit to the businesses and the patrons. I agree that a lot of people are hesitant to go inside, even if there's room in there. Now, as the heat and the humidity increase, that may change a little bit, but I think having the outdoor seating as long as possible is good. I also agree that this does give us a chance to try new things, and it creates, I think, a little bit more flexibility with residents to be willing to try something new, whereas before COVID-19, they weren't so agreeable to some of the ideas in the downtown vibrancy. So again, all in favor of this.
Rogers?
There's one thing the tables have brought of it. It's vibrancy downtown, certainly under different circumstances than we originally thought, but I completely agree with my council colleagues, and I'm encouraged that they very well may maintain, both for social distancing concerns, but also because they very well might be good for those businesses.
Yeah, and just so you're aware, we have encouraged the businesses on both blocks of Prince George Street to have conversation now about what's working, what's not working, and be prepared to come to us with what their suggestion might be for what a long-term outdoor seating plan might look like on those two blocks. And it looks like they're doing that those conversations are occurring. Whether or not they will be able to come to consensus or not, it remains to be seen, but I think that they are certainly making the effort.
Well, I think what we found is people like to eat outside, you know, that kind of outdoor, that setting of being outside is very pleasant. It's kind of like being in a bistro in Europe somewhere. And so I can see that it's going to be popular even after we get through this. And so
I just one comment. I wish there was some ways that we could have a little soft ground. You know, it gets very hot being asphalt, and if there were some areas where it was little grassy spots, it might be nice too. But we can only dream and think about other ways and places.
Well, I think that's probably, that is part of planning for a long-term solution. Certainly if we were going to convert, just looking at the one block of Prince George Street where we have one lane open, it really doesn't, if we were going to make that a long-term closure, there'd be no need for that to be pavement. So we could look at a softer treatment. I don't think grass is possible, but certainly we could look at porous asphalt, which is sort of a rubbery texture, and certainly doesn't get as hot.
and just to be clear, we're not talking about just down on Prince George Street. This is going to be citywide for all the restaurants that wish to take advantage of outdoor seating that they can. I know we put a lot of emphasis on downtown, but I had a couple meals out at cafes under the tent. And
right.
that's, you know, as nice as it can be for an outdoor setting. So is there a motion?
I move that the City Council approve Ordinance 20-08 as drafted.
Actually, it should be 09, Ms. Ramsey, I'm sorry.
I move that the City Council approve Ordinance 20-09 as drafted.
Second.
Ms. Flico, please.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Mr. Maslin?
Aye.
So that takes us to the open forum portion of the meeting where there's an opportunity for Mr. Shelley and anybody else who would like to come forward to address council. And as a reminder, please state your name and address, and please limit your comments to 5 minutes. Welcome, Mr. Shelley.
Thank you very much. I am Gary Shelley. I live at 205 Indian Springs Road. It's been almost a year since I last spoke here in open forum, but I want you to know that I have not disappeared. Congratulations to you, Mr. Mayor, on your selection. Well-deserved. Also to Mr. Dent as Vice Mayor. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to our newest councilman, Mr. Dent, Mr. Rogers, and a warm welcome back to Ms. Ramsey. Along with Mr. Maslin, Mr. Trivett, and our staff, the city is in great hands. I commend each of you for your commitment to the city, your pledge to transparency, and your oath to faithfully execute all the duties incumbent with your positions. I especially want to take this opportunity to thank those who keep us safe, our police and fire personnel, who have always rendered outstanding service when my family has needed to call upon them. These are extraordinary times for both the nation and Williamsburg. The future is rife with uncertainty. But we have the greatest system of government the world has ever known, And with capable leadership, I have every confidence that we will emerge stronger than ever, both as a nation and as a city. Our lives have been disrupted by a confluence of issues, not just the coronavirus, but issues such as Black Lives Matter, the role of the police in the community, and the growing disparity of income inequality. The nation is reeling not only from the pandemic, but also from the inevitable consequences that come from not acknowledging darker episodes from our past and for not holding accountable those responsible for their misdeeds. We as a city face many challenges. I look forward, excuse me, I don't think I can read without my glasses. I look forward to working with you as we march forward. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anybody else like to come forward and address council? Ms. Benez.
So first of all, I am Terry Benez with the Business Council, and it's nice to see everybody's faces after so long, so it's nice to see you in person. So I really just wanted to come forward to thank the city for all they're doing on behalf of the businesses, the grant programs, and the tables down on Duke of Gloucester Street. It's making a difference to all of our businesses, to all of us. We're hearing it. So I want you to hear from us, from me, loud and clear. We appreciate the support. We appreciate the help. And I want to give a special call out to the Department of Economic Development, to Michelle and her team. I know they've taken a lot of calls. I almost think sometimes they're psychiatrists a little bit, but they're doing a lot of helpful things, and they're listening to a lot of people, and we're hearing that feedback over at the Business Council. So I'd be remiss if I didn't get up and say thank you very much for all that the city's doing, and for Michelle and her team, and for all that you're doing. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time. Anybody else? Seeing none, we'll close the open forum, and I believe we have something for closed session.
We do. I move to go into closed session pursuant to Section 2.2-3711 of the Code of Virginia for the purpose of discussing one personnel matter per subparagraph 1 concerning appointments to boards and commissions.
Second.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Mr. Maslin?
All right.
So we'll take just a brief recess and convene in the workroom in the back, and then when that concludes, we'll come back out to go back into open session.